I am John Brantingham. I am a poet and a writer, and the question is, what does my craft mean to me? What does poetry and writing mean to me? I was trained mostly as a fiction writer, but I've kind of turned to poetry as well in the last few years. And it's a sort of a complicated question because it changed and it continues to change. When I was young, it was because I was hard of hearing, and so it was one of the only ways that I could communicate, was to write. And then as I regained my hearing, that answer has changed. And so when I was young, reading and writing was the reaction to being exceptionally lonely, because I'm an extroverted person. And so I'd read and I'd feel that connection, that human connection with other people. As I've grown up, it's one of those places that I can retreat into what I feel is my real self. And there's this outward sort of persona that I have to maintain just as a person alive today in this world, as a teacher, as whatever. But there's things that I keep to myself, that I keep protected back there, and the writing is the only place I can really get to it myself. And so it's how I understand the world, how I come through to the world, how I figure things out even. Until I've written about them, I can't really understand them well, especially those things that happen to me that are painful or joyful or anything like that, right? It's also, I'm somebody who believes in meditation. It's the deepest meditation I can think of, going into myself. I'm a Quaker, and meditation is a big part of what we do, an unprogrammed Quaker. And so meditation is tremendously important. It's the only way we can get into ourselves. Writing is the ultimate form of meditation because you're focused. As I've gotten older and I've regained my hearing, it's grown to mean something else, and I'm not sure what that is. It's more now than just me trying to reach that inner self. It's me reaching other people. It's me, what would it be? It's gone beyond that. I guess it's how I work through my life, and I understand the pain of life and everything else. Okay, so the second question is, why did I get into the field of education? What am I doing here? I got into the field of education because I like to teach, and I like talking to people, and I like to see change in people. One of the things I truly love is watching someone who really, I teach at a community college, so a lot of people go there just to try to figure out what they're going to do, and they're kind of they don't know if they're going to continue with college or not, or what they're going to do. And showing somebody that whatever their dream is, they can achieve that thing is extraordinary. That they belong to this community, and they can belong to this community of academics and thinkers and things. They never thought that. They never really imagined that as part of their lives. That's extraordinary. We have people starting, I guess, developmental classes, and these are people who have been told over and over in subtle and unsubtle ways that they're not going to be part of anything in their lives. They had better learn a trade or start working with their bodies in whatever way, right? And it's great to see them opening up, and you do that in a number of ways. One of the ways is you say to them, you belong here, right? Number two, you take them seriously, and that doesn't mean giving them A's all the time. That means giving them F's when they've earned F's, and then explaining to them as though they're adults. And number three is creating a community in which they are part of an intellectual group of people, right? So that if you grew up in a community of athletics or gang or whatever, you think, okay, these are my people. This is who I am. But suddenly they're exposed to writers and thinkers who are taking them seriously, famous, unfamous, whatever, right? They're being brought to readings, they're being brought to lectures by people coming onto campuses. They realize, oh, I'm part of, this is who I am now, right? I was that other person, maybe I still am that other person, but now I'm also this person. I'm somebody who can achieve. I'm part part of that group that Stephen Hawking's in. I'm part of that group that all these people are in. And when I was young, I thought to myself that I really want to be a writer, and so I better give up on that dream, right? Because that's what I want. And so I started studying, and I'm glad I'm a teacher. Don't get me wrong, because if I want to be a writer, I would be a writer. I'm also a writer, but if I wanted to be a full-time only writer, I would do that thing. It's not a difficult thing to do. But a lot of people will crap on your dreams. A lot of people will crap on your ideas, and they'll say, well, being a writer isn't realistic. And at first it looks like it's not realistic, right? Because you start and you work on your stuff and you send your stuff out and it doesn't happen. And you're working 2-3 hours a day and nothing's really going on with your career. That's a recipe for failure in any field, right? As a teacher, I don't work 2 or 3 hours a day. I work 12 hours a day, right? And every single professional does that. But when people come to the arts, they're like, well, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to work for 2 or 3 hours, then I'm going to go out and mope. And moping is not a really great strategy. And so there are things that you have to do as a writer, and that's write, number one, read, number two. But then you also have to take care of the career aspects. If you want to be a professional writer, you've got to take care of those career aspects. And that means going out and meeting people and networking and creating your own opportunities sometimes, writing for specific places sometimes, talking to people that you need to talk to, all of those things, right? In the same way that I'm a professor, I'm a teacher, right? And so how much do I teach each week? I would probably work 60 to 70 hours a week, and I teach for 16, right? What those people think of as the teaching is a very small part of it, right? It's not even half of what I do is stand in front of a class telling people things. Same thing with being a writer. Only about half of what you're doing, less than half of what you're doing probably, is going to be sitting down, pen and paper, doing this stuff. You've got to do those other things too. Just in the same way that as a teacher I have to grade, and I have to work with other teachers to figure out programs, I have to hire people, I have to do all of these things that you do as a professional. So that's why I became a teacher, so I could show people how to do that. Now, since I've become a teacher, I've found that a lot of people have started to do that, right? And a lot of people start to do that and realize that what they want is not to be a professional writer. That's good too. I remember a few years ago, the president of the Creative Writing Club came to me, and we were talking and said, I've known you for 2 years and I've never seen you read anything or write anything. He said, oh yeah, I don't write anything and I don't like to read. I said, why are you a creative writing major? And he just stopped and he stood up and he walked out and he came back an hour later and he said, I don't think I want to be a creative writing major. It's like, yeah, that's probably a good indication, right? But it's if you're not interested in doing those things, you shouldn't do it, right? You should do whatever your passion is. I think probably the most important thing to do, aside from the writing and the reading, is being a good literary citizen. And what that means is creating opportunities for yourself and for others, right? And so you're not, people wonder why those opportunities don't exist, because we're not creating them for ourselves, right? Creating opportunities where people actually want to interact with your fiction. And here's the thing about being an artist of any kind. If you're starting out as an artist, you're not competing against other people who are starting out as artists, and you're not competing against me with your art. You're competing with Hemingway. And the reason is, when people walk into a bookstore, they know they've had a good time with Hemingway, and they know they're going to plop down $10 and they're going to have another good time with Hemingway. It's always interesting to read a Hemingway book, right? Or Vonnegut, right? You're competing with that. And so why should somebody go online? And if you're starting out, it's probably going to be online, and they're digging through those stuff. They want to have this literary experience. Why should they go to you instead of Hemingway, right? Who they know they're going to have a good time with. Well, the only way that's going to happen is if you somehow contact them and start building sort of a community for them, right? So that you're speaking to them, right? I can think of one of the first movies that really spoke directly to me and my generation was Before Sunrise, and I can remember walking in and seeing that, and somebody my age doing things that I had done, right? And movies before that had been really talking to other people, and it's like, okay, this is, I didn't know about this, but I read about him in a newspaper. That was him doing the job of his career. I went specifically out of my way to see that movie because I knew it was going to talk to me. What he did this is Richard Linklater who did this movie. What he did was he made sure that there was press out there, that he went to the festivals, that he would do all that stuff. If you want to be a writer, you've got to do the same sort of thing. If you want to create a community, you want to create a buzz about yourself, there has to be people out there that you're talking to, but they also have to know that you're writing about them, right? And so how do you reach them? You reach them through creating in a couple of ways. You can create festivals or readings, that kind of thing, right? So that's really easy for me because I'm, number one, a global thinker, and number two, I'm an extrovert, right? So it's easy for me to create readings and that sort of thing. If it's hard for you, don't do that, right? Instead, what you do is you support other people's readings. And say you're incredibly introverted. I have a friend who's incredibly introverted, and he knows how to do computers. So he did the smartest thing I've ever seen in my life. He went to reading series and he said, let me create a website for you. And suddenly he's part of this thing, and it's easy for him to now negotiate that stuff. Number two, you can create magazines online or off, or you can work with people's magazines, right? And so helping people, that's one of the early things I did as a writer, is I was really lucky to get on board with a magazine that I love called the Chiron Review, and I'm still there. The Chiron Review was kind of an institution for years and years and years, and they needed an extra person, so I pounced, right? There's nothing like initiative, though, in an artist. If you like the Paris Review, write to them and say you'd like to help them, right? And say it passionately, and who knows, probably you'll be told yes. When I was 21, I was an idiot, but I did something smart, and then I did something stupid. The smart thing I did is I wrote to all the magazines in the LA area, and I said, I'd like to work for you, right? And I said it passionately. And I got 10 phone calls back, and they said, well, we don't have any money for you because you have no experience, but we've got internships, which could lead to paying jobs, right? And I did the stupid thing because I was 21. I said, well, I've got to be paid, right, which I think is a generally good idea, to be paid as a writer, whatever, but maybe not when you're 21, just starting out. Maybe you can develop that sort of thing. And so that I think working with magazines and stuff, people are looking for people who have initiative, who have a willingness to work with others, that kind of thing. And number three is working online. There's a lot of opportunities you can create for yourself online. Developing a blog is sometimes a good idea. Do not write the blog what it's like to be an artist. There are too many out there, right? And like, what are you going to say that's new? Instead, do something niche. For example, this summer I'm going to live in a tent for 10 weeks. Just live in the tent in the middle of the woods, right, away from Wi-Fi and everything else. That'd be an interesting blog, right? Because probably the people I'm writing to find that interesting. The people who don't find that interesting aren't going to buy my stuff anyway, right? What else could you do? Anything that you do that other people don't do. A lot of people are gamers now. Write about games, right? Do a whole blog just on, I don't know, games. So Skyrim. Do one on Skyrim. I've never played Skyrim, but you could do a blog on that, and people will be attracted to that, especially if you find an interesting, funny, religious sort of slant to it, that kind of thing. Work on other people's blogs. The problem with having a blog is you run out of content like that. And so if you can just start giving people content, that's great, and suddenly your name is out there. And that then links to larger and larger publications and things that you want to do like that. Okay, so the question is, third question is, what can the community do to help artists? I think it's really important that the artist first works for the community, right, to try to build that community. But then I think that the community can also help the artist. And there are a number of ways. I'm not going to be specific here because I'll be accusing people of things. And I don't want to accuse people of things. But a number of years ago, we were working with a city, and we said, okay, we would like to set up, you've got all of these empty sort of storefronts, and we'd like to set up a thing for the community, both kids and adults, and I think it's important to include the adults. once you hit 18, it's hard to find things to be a part of, right? And I mean, I understand why, but it would be nice to the adults were supported too. So you've got all these empty warehouses, you've got all these in municipal buildings just sitting empty. We can come in, we won't use the electricity, the air, we'll just do it during the day and open windows, and we'll create a space for community members to do art and writing and make sure that we're stewards of these places. You know, we won't tear it up. And we went back and forth, and the city worked with us a little bit, but eventually they said that we found out that they'd been on the verge of canceling all our programs a number of times, so we moved to the DAW, basically, which is a wonderful space. In that area where we were working, they didn't change anything except for that they started opening a lot of sex-based businesses and hustler shops, things like that. And so what they did was they found a way to make money at the very fringe of their community, putting these sorts of businesses that exploit people in the poorest parts of their community, right? Rather than working. Now, if they're going to have that, okay, but why not also just put a little bit of effort for the people who live there as well? Rich or poor, put a little bit of effort and just allow people to open doors, right? We would have provided our own insurance. That's the kind of thing I think it's important for communities to do. Not being so completely negative about the sorts of things the ways you can approach this. Colleges can do this. Colleges do this for the most part, and then often those programs will end because of institutional roadblocks. Let's see, what else can the community do? I think it's important as a community that we get out there and we support the writers. I think there's a very large expectation that artists are going to work for free. I had one of my, do you know the Regents exam? The Regents exam in New York is, it's an entrance exam for students going from high school to college. The Regents exam took one of my poems and did a test for entrance into college using, the students had to write a comparison between my poem and one of Isaac Asimov's stories. Didn't even inform me, obviously didn't pay me, didn't do anything, it's my work product. I'm not going to sue them, I don't want to sue them. But you know, even just giving me a little bit of promotion would have helped me. I think they should have paid me. I think you don't simply take someone's work product. And they didn't inform the publication that they just pulled something offline. And it's a large institution, right? And they really could have done something. That kind of thing. Don't expect people to work for free. A lot of people think that artists are going to work purely for the exposure, and that's what the term they use. Well, you can't only work for exposure. You know, if you want something of value in your community, you at some point have to, okay, that person's exposed, let's maybe give that person some money now. This happens to musicians, I think, more than anybody. People want you to come to their wedding and play for 7 hours for a meal and some exposure. It's a little bit like asking somebody to help you move your house and all you're going to give them is pizza and beer. That never seems fair to me either, right? That's a ridiculous amount of work. Okay, so be willing to pay, that kind of thing. I think it's important for artists not to be willing to give away their art for free too often. There's some of that's okay, but right, don't just like be putting out there for absolutely nothing. What else can the community do? I think the community can, I don't think it's necessary that you show up to things that you clearly aren't going to like, but if those things look interesting, I think it's important that you come and see those things. Much of the time, art is directed towards a very specific demographic. And if you're not that demographic, I don't know why you would go. So I think it's the artist's job then to contact that demographic and to give them a reason to go. If you're an artist, you have to find a way, create buy-in for the viewer. And I don't know if you know what buy-in is. Buy-in is the feeling that they are part of what you're doing, and they're going to support it because they are part of this. Now, how can you make somebody feel that they're part of it? Well, musicians are good at this, right? So they'll do things like they'll show very clearly that we're one of you, right? And so it's like, oh, okay, so my own people are succeeding, right? Punk rockers in the 80s did that really, really well. It's like nobody was representing those kids, and now punk rockers came and said, we're one of you, right? Now it's important as an artist that you're doing that so people can say, oh, I see what I'm getting. I see what the value of that thing is, right? So sometimes that also means making them a part of the art that you're doing. And that's hard to be specific about because each art is different. But if you're talking about, I don't know, if you're a visual artist, that means you have to paint them. You have to paint things that matter to them, that kind of thing. As a writer, that means you have to write about their concerns and really go. It's not to say you necessarily have to like try to figure out what. It's like you're going to write something and figure out who that is, and then show them that you were writing about their concerns. Okay, I think that's what the community can do for us, and I'll see you later.